everyone being late to the party, so to speak here. I was tied up with something else that I needed to attend to, and so once again, sorry to keep you all waiting.
Our first question is from Ted Colton, Great News.
Hey, Steve, how you doing today?
Good, Ted. How are you?
Good, good. Just talk to us about your decision. I mean, what brought you to the conclusion that Jeff's the right man to still continue on the job?
Well, I would say two things maybe most important to me. And one, I feel our team was collectively very competitive. Whether we played well or not every night was different. We played hard, and I think our players play hard. And I think that's a reflection of the coaching staff that they have the coaching staff has the respect of the players. And that was important. The other part is Jeff has really shown to work with me with, transitioning our young players into the lineup, being patient with them, not handing them positions or ice time, really forcing them to earn it and guiding them along and being firm, yet patient with our young guys. And as you know, as we're rebuilding and trying to over the course of last year, this year, and in the coming seasons, to move more younger players into the lineup. I think it's important to have a coach that has a calmness and a willingness and the patience to allow these younger players to go through some of the growing pains of playing in the NHL.
The last one. I mean, did you like the progress that was made this year? Did you feel like there was a good amount of steady progress being made?
I do, Ted. Yes, I did. We've got a long way to go. We recognize that. We've got a lot of work to do in all areas. But again, I watch our team play. I like the competitive fire that our team shows. They work hard. They compete hard. And again, I think throughout the course of the season, I see progress being made. And, specifically, I'm watching some of our younger players take on bigger roles within a game. And our veterans, I think they're high character guys, and that's what they do. They play hard, they compete hard. So I think there's progress. But having said that, there's so much work to be done. We've got a lot of improving on the ice, whether in all aspects of it, offensively, defensively, special teams, but individually as players, we need to improve the talent level of our team. So as an organization, it's important for our hockey operations department, our management, our pro and amateur scouting staff to really do their jobs and in order to get us to where we're going. So
appreciate this. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Next question, Helene St. James, Detroit Free Press.
That wasn't me. Don't blink.
Steve, nice to see you. When in the past 2 years, what have you maybe learned about Jeff?
Well, he's very passionate about his job. He's very serious about his job. Great attention to detail, extremely good work, a great work ethic. He very well prepared. Every day, I think, is well thought out. Every practice, his game plans, he prepares. So I've enjoyed working with him in that he's comfortable in speaking his mind, sharing his thoughts, and for a manager and a coach relationship to debate, to discuss, and then ultimately respect my decisions. And in return, it's my job to respect the coach's decisions as well and allow him to do his job. So again, I think I still consider Jeff to be a relatively young man and a relatively young coach, and all these experiences that he's gone through, whether it's gone through his time in junior USHL or college hockey, the American Hockey League, and now through the National Hockey, to continue to improve and develop just like players do. And so again, he's worked extremely hard. We haven't as an organization, we've been rebuilding, and it's hard to coach a rebuilding team. And, when at the trade deadline, I've been here for 2 years, and we're trading players for future assets. And now and a little bit last year, this year, we're starting to see some of those future assets turn into players, and that is going to make our coaching staff job a little bit easier.
Just everything that happened this year. I mean, you lost 5 guys to quarantine a week into the season, and Tyler Bertuzzi lasted 9 games, season-ending injuries to some other guys. How did you think the team performed all in all? I mean, the depth was never really there just because of injuries and COVID and the pandemic.
Well, again, I go back. Obviously, we had a few clunkers along the way, but I think every team in the league had a few of those. But in general, I thought our team, again, was competitive. There were areas of our game that got better throughout the course of the season. I think as the year went on, our goaltending was very good and very consistent as it went on. That helped every part of our game. Defensively, we made a lot of changes, whether it be through the neutral zone in our end of the rink, killing penalties, and we saw improvement in that area. And, our one area that we need to address and get better at is we need to score more goals, improve offensively. That's easier said than done. And part of that, the biggest part of that is having players that have the ability to produce. So over the course of the season, I thought there was a lot of progress made collectively as a team, but individually not only for our young guys, but some of our veteran players played extremely well as the year went on, and it was very beneficial for us, but beneficial for them individually as well.
Just last thing for me while I have you, Steve. Moritz Seider was named SHL Defenseman of the Year today. What excites you most about him coming here next season?
Well, I think I know Moritz had a great year in Sweden. He made the decision to want to go and play, and we supported that decision, and it turned out well. He played a lot. He played in all situations on a very good team, and the Swedish league is a very good league. So you know what? I want to temper the enthusiasm or the excitement. He's a great young player. He's got, he's going, his next move is to the NHL. We'll see how training camp, the preseason goes. And, it's a huge step up from the American League or from the Swedish League to the National Hockey League. But he probably exceeded our expectations last year going to the American League. He did very well. I'm not really surprised that he did well in the Swedish League. He's got a great head on his shoulders. I think he's got good hockey sense. He's very competitive. Obviously, he's got size. His skills are good. He's got a lot of work to do, but I think there's a lot of potential for him. So we're excited to have him over here next year. And again, we'll see. Our hope is that he's ready to play for the Red Wings at the start of the season.
Thanks. I noticed the release said Bilesma is moving on. Does that mean Huda and Saleko are staying, or?
Sorry, Helene, I didn't understand that.
In the release, it said that Dan Bilesma is exploring other opportunities. Does that mean Doug Huda and Jeff Saleko are staying, or?
We're working through some other things at this time. I would say today I don't really anticipate other changes on our staff, but I wouldn't rule that out either. But yes, Dan is going to move on and look for other opportunities within the game.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Next up, Answer Khan, I'm live.
Yeah, hi, Steve. What is the length of Jeff's contract?
Answer, I've kind of made it my own policy to not discuss or announce the term of any of my staff's contracts. I don't think it's something that I want to share with anyone or intend to share. I haven't in the past, and I won't moving forward.
Okay. Also, Dylan Larkin, do you have an update? We haven't heard much of him about his status the last few weeks. Just how is his health right now?
He's recovering. We expect him to make a full recovery from his injury. He's being monitored. They're very cautious in the approach, but right now he's kind of in a rest or period in healing before he'll get into training again fully. So, if we were playing today, he wouldn't be cleared to play, but we expect him to be ready to go once the season starts.
What exactly happened? It looked like he got cross-checked in the neck area. I mean, can you share just his injury, what it is?
Answer, to be consistent, he suffered an upper body injury and is day-to-day.
Okay. But no surgery or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Next question, Brad Galley, WXYZ.
Steve, thanks for taking time to do this with us today.
My pleasure, Brad.
What was the conversation with Jeff? You said, and he said you guys would talk after the season. When you finally did sit down, was there a lot of talking? Was this something that lasted throughout this last week? Was it brief and you waited a week? Well, how did it all go down?
We met last week. I think it was the priority was to address. I think it was the right thing to do, and the number one priority for a whole host of reasons. Let's get clarity. Let's address what our plan is with our coaching staff. And I thought it was important for Jeff and I to sit down. We did and talk about a whole host of things: our team, our players, the way we do things. His expectations, my expectations, going where we are today, where we think we'll be next year, and just to make sure we're on the same page and talk about things that we need to do better on the ice, the way we play, personnel, you name it. We talked about a lot of things, and I think we have a clear understanding kind of what our expectations are and what we need to do. And I think Jeff understands what I'm trying to do and is willing to work with me on that. And also, I know what our coaches are trying to do. I know the areas that they feel that they want to work on, focus on, even whether it's personnel or just the way we do things on the ice. So we talked about that last week, and then ultimately, after a couple of days of discussions and back and forth, and both he and I asking and answering a lot of questions, my feeling was I'm very comfortable, and I think it's the right thing to do is to keep Jeff on as our coach. And then ultimately, I say this to you, like we need to have a better team. We need our current players to play better, and it's up to the management to bring in players that make us a better team. You need good players to win in the league, and I can change coaches year after year after year. We need good players, and if we don't have good players, it's not going to change.
Does that ramp up next year when you have some of these high picks coming in? You sign Raymond to the pro contract. You have Seider, you just said, coming in next year. Is there a little bit more of an expectation next year, knowing that some of your handpicked guys are going to be on this roster and hopefully guiding that next step?
Well, I wouldn't be committing to these guys being on the roster yet. They have to make the team. If they make the team, we'll be thrilled. But again, they're young guys. I want them to make the team and have a positive impact. Our expectation, I think, and our hope is that Moritz is ready to go. We'll see that next fall. Lucas, I don't want to rule it out, but again, we'll let the situation play itself out, and if they prove they're ready to go, they'll be on the team. But again, we just have to. I'm not going to force it or rush them. But if they're on the team and they're playing, we'll be real happy. But again, we have high expectations for them. And is it next season or the season after? I'm not sure. But we would love them to play, but they're going to need to earn it.
Thanks, Steve.
Next question from Larry Leach, Associated Press.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Larry.
You mentioned this was number one priority. Can you discuss at all, like how tough of a decision was this? Was this something you wrestled with? Is this something you thought you were going to end up here in terms of extending Jeff? And second part is kind of what's next in terms of priorities this offseason?
Well, I certainly give it a lot of thought throughout the course of the season. Whether it's your players whose contracts are up, your staff members, coaches, definitely because that's a high profile one. You give it a lot of thought, and my plan really was I'm just going to let the season play out. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, from within our organization, get a lot of viewpoints and see where we're at. And then Jeff and I need to sit down and see how does he feel about the situation? How enthusiastic was he? And clearly in our conversations, he's determined to be successful here and looks forward to the challenge of continuing with rebuilding the Red Wings. So was it a difficult decision, a hard decision? Not really. I'm comfortable with it and I feel good about it. And we'll continue to work. Having said that, we all have expectations and we got to continue to go in the right direction. And I don't know that everything always works out perfectly. There'll be bumps along the road here and things won't go as perfect as we hope for next season, but we'll plow through it and keep going from there. And sorry, Larry, I forgot the second part of your
no
question.
problem. I try not to do two-parters, but just, you said this is the number one priority. That makes sense. Just what do you see as the other top priorities this offseason?
Well, now, you know what, we'll watch the playoffs. There's still a little bit of the USHL is playing, so there's some hockey to watch for the draft, but our priorities now are really to get, with our amateur scouting department, to get organized for the draft, make sure we know, get our draft list in order. I guess that would be one. Preparing for the expansion draft. Between now and the end of the playoffs, we're obviously out, so we'll spend some time talking to other clubs that aren't playing, and as teams get eliminated, work your way around the league to find out if there's any match similar to the trade deadline, to find out what teams are trying to do, if there's a fit that we can address any of our needs through a trade prior to the expansion draft. And things will happen really, really quickly once you get close to that expansion draft. So we got to really be prepared for the draft, and then, free agency to kind of get ourselves organized to make sure we have identified what, if any, targets in free agency and be prepared to go, because once we get the expansion draft, the NHL draft, and the free agency period, that'll all happen very quickly at the end of July. So between now and then, those are our biggest priorities. In the interim, we spent some time talking to all the players within the Red Wings with Grand Rapids, who just wrapped up on the weekend. So there's quite a bit to do. And again, once we get to the end of July, it's going to be busy. And then on top of that, it's watching these games at night, which I'm sure most of you are doing as well. Every night there's playoff games on, and for us, they're enjoyable to watch, but we're watching with a purpose for sure.
Next up, Max Goldman with The Athletic.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Max.
I'm just curious, you mentioned offense, and I was curious kind of what's your appetite for potentially doing that through the free agent market or trades, if it means, trading picks or prospects, I guess, relative to past seasons?
Well, if my feeling, I got to be careful what I say, because I know you're going to hold me to, but in general, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to be trading draft picks and prospects for players that might not be here in 3, 4, 5 years. So if we are able to do something with that, with some of our future assets, I'd certainly be willing to do that, but I would look to add younger players that are going to fit with the core group of those guys, which are basically, you look at, Dylan Larkin, Verana, Tyler Bertuzzi's, they're, roughly in that 26 or under range. Get players that fit with that group. I'd certainly be interested in that. That's not necessarily, you're limited to what other teams are willing to do as well. So having said that, if something out there is too good to pass up, that doesn't necessarily fit that exact description, I'd be open to it. But ultimately, you can look at free agency and the players that might be there today based on their contract status today. I don't know that they're going to be there once free agency opens up. And one, what they're going to cost, and two, are we a fit for them? So we'll certainly explore it. Free agency is a little bit different than trades. In trades, I'd really like to add younger players. Free agency, we're more open to anything. But I'm not sure how the expansion draft is going to affect what happens around the league with teams. It's still too early to really to know. I've talked to 1 or 2 teams. Really, that's about it. If there's going to be a lot of movement related to the expansion draft, I'm not really sure.
And then you mentioned Tyler Bertuzzi. I mean, how much have you been in touch with him since his surgery? How's he doing?
He's doing really well. I can't say I see him every day, but we're down here at Little Caesars. He's coming in to do. He's somewhat limited. It's early since his surgery. Somewhat limited in what he's doing, but he comes in. He seems to be doing well. Tyler, as you know, is pretty quiet. He doesn't say a lot. He's very upbeat and positive. Again, we expect him to be, full steam ahead in September, and it's just a slow process initially after the surgery and gradually ramp things up. But appears to be doing well, and we don't expect any complications along the way. It's just a very deliberate and methodical rehab process for him.
With the vacancy from Biles leaving, I guess, how do you kind of envision, like, what are you looking for in an ideal assistant coach? Is that going to be Jeff's call? How involved would you like to be in that search?
Well, I think we'll work together in that process, and we're getting started. Kind of start to see who's interested, who are candidates, who's a good fit. Doug Huda, basically working with the defense and with Jeff Blashill and the other coaches heading up the penalty killing unit. I kind of assume that Blashill will keep Doug's duties the same. We probably look for someone to work with our forwards, be more involved in the power play, and we'll see. But Jeff and I will really work together to figure out who's the right person for that role.
And then last thing for me, Keith Petruzzelli, the prospect, I think can become a free agent later this summer. Have you spoken with him? Do you have plans to sign him, or what's the plan there?
Yes, we've spoken with his advisors. I think Keith's decision is, does he stay in school or does he leave? And that's really his decision on what he's going to do.
And that's because he gets the extra year, because I think he's played, but they all get an extra year.
Yeah, that where they can defer a year, I think, and stay in school if they want. And if he wants to leave, he can basically issue, I think, a 30-day notice and become a free agent if he's not signed.
Okay. Thanks very much, Steve.
Next up, Art Wagner, third and lead.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Art. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Since Max just took my question again about Petruzzelli, but I mean, even if he decides to stay, there's no carryover then, right? I mean, because of the 2017 draft class, you either sign him or he goes free. Is that not, that rule's not going to be like carryover?
I think Art, if he stays in school, he would. The Red Wings would retain his rights.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good to hear. With that said, I'm really in the expansion draft. I've had a week to really reflect about this, and I'm kind of curious over a week. Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that time. Have you decided what you're going to do? Are you going to go 7-3-1 or 8 skaters overall and a goalie? Have you given yourself enough time to kind of figure that out?
Yeah, I kind of have an idea of what we're going to do, but that also is subject to change if we were to make a trade with another team that would force us to make it go in a different direction. But yeah, I do have an idea. I think it's pretty clear, really, with the roster that we have or the lineup that we have today or the players we have under contract today. For me, it's pretty clear what I'll do at this point. But again, that's subject to change. Should we strike a deal with a team that may want to move any particular player, and at this stage, that's way too early to say if there's any of those opportunities out there.
Like I said, I know we've had a week since the season ended. Is there one thing that was a pleasant surprise for you this year that happened on ice that maybe you were hopeful might happen, or you saw something that you sat back and said, "Wow, I didn't see that coming"?
Off the top of my head, not really. Like I was pleased with the work ethic of our team this year. I was very pleased. The second half of the season, I think our goaltenders both performed very well. I'm very happy to see down the stretch, say the last 20 games, where our penalty killing took a significant step in the right direction and improved. So that may be the one thing that jumps out the most, that we improved in that area. And I think collectively, defensively, I thought we got much better over the course of the season. And, we had those 2 home games, I think, in the same week with Tampa and Dallas, where I think Dallas had 50-something shots. Tampa had 40-something shots, and we didn't have that many. But I'm watching the games from above, and if anything, the really good, a lot of these shots were from the outside. There was a lot of time in our zone, and a lot of the shots were just hitting our goalie right in the crest. They were easy saves to make. So I thought we've progressed in that area defensively. And part of it was just simply the play of some of our D just got better and better over the course of the season. But I think as a team, we were playing better generally defensively starting. We got a long way to go, trust me in that. But our goals against came down. Part of it was our goaltending, but overall, our play defensively improved, and it still has to get much better. But that maybe, in particular, Art, the penalty killing is probably the one thing that showed significant progress for the team. And I think over the course of the season, I think our last 30 games, we might have been a game below 500. The trade deadline, we were right around 500. So our record improved, and there was generally progress throughout all the different parts of our game. And having said that, we're missing Tyler. We lose Fabry. We lose Dylan. We're losing some key guys, and we're forced to play better defensively. And in some ways, that helps us going into next year, because guys were, Michael Rasmussens and whatnot are playing in significant roles in defensive situations, where if we had our full lineup, they might not have played in.
And finally, Joe Veleno, he says that going over to Malmo really maybe even accelerated his pace to make it into the NHL. I know it was a small sample size, and he went back to GR and played, I guess, the final 4 games had 3 points or whatever. How about Veleno's game? Is it starting to round in nicely, and does he have a legitimate shot at being a wing next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Joe had a great year last year in the American Hockey League. He didn't put up big numbers, but he played really well, and by the end of the season, was really good in both ends of the rink, and was having a real positive impact in the game on the team. And for a whole host of reasons, it's unfortunate that the season was canceled. These kids didn't get to play in the playoffs, but he had a really good year last year as a 19-year-old, and then he made the decision to go over and play in Sweden, and he did real well. It's a different game. It's a bigger ice surface, but he played a lot, and it just kind of further emphasizes the point for these guys got to play regardless of whether you're in the NHL, the American League, Sweden, or Finland, whatever. They're playing a lot. It's a good thing for them. And he came back here and played five games here with the Red Wings, and he looked good. And we finished off the season last week in Grand Rapids. I talked to him, it was this morning or yesterday. We've been talking to our players, whether it be through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatnot, kind of virtually getting some of the year-end meetings out of the way, and he feels really good about it. He's got a great attitude. He works really, really hard. As I'm sure if you've talked to him, he's a really nice young man. So, our message to him was, Joe, you come in next year, you're going to have to, much like it is the same with all our young guys. If you're ready to play on the team and play a role that helps us win and play competitive, significant minutes, you're going to be on the Red Wings. And if you're not beating out the other guys, you'll be in Grand Rapids playing there. But we're very happy with his attitude, with his progress, and his potential going forward. He's a really good young prospect with a great attitude and very driven. Okay, and finally, and I promise this is the last question, but how impressive was it what Donovan Sabrango was able to do, considering he should have been a Kitchener Ranger this year and not a Grand Rapids Griffin? Yeah, he's a really nice young guy. He's very mature, quiet but confident, and extremely competitive. He went into the American League, and he wasn't shy at all. He was aggressive, showed real good hockey sense, showed real competitiveness, and played with an edge. Keeps the game for a D-man good. He makes a simple play. He doesn't try to do too much. So, he had a good year, and again, a young man who turned like not a great situation into a real positive, that he was willing to come over and play, and probably exceeded our expectations. We weren't really sure what to expect, and ended up again. He earned every shift he got, and he ended up playing a lot of minutes. It was really beneficial for him to be there with Dylan McGrath, Lashoff, Joe Hicketts. Some veteran guys who are really good guys that could kind of help him out a little bit, but it was very encouraging for him, and obviously great for the Red Wings. He looks like he's got a real good prospect as well.
Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anytime.
Next up, Carly Johnson, Red Wings TV.
Thanks so much for doing this, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Yep, no problem, Carly.
Quite a few restricted free agents questions that I want to talk about. A couple of the younger guys on there that we were able to see in the winged wheel this season was awesome to see a lot of development that they had in the National Hockey League. I do want to ask you about Michael Rasmussen, Giovanni Smith, Dennis Cholowski, and Gustav Lindstrom, just to name a few. What kind of progress did you see out of them this season, and how did you see them fitting into the big leagues?
Yeah, well, we're very encouraged by all those players that you mentioned. They all somewhat transitioned into the NHL. Here at the end of the season, starting with Michael, who probably was the first one to come up, and then just before the deadline, Gus and Dennis come in as well. I think I'm missing one that you mentioned, but we're hoping that they all continue at the start of next year to have the impact that they had. Certainly their time in the American League was beneficial for them this year, playing a lot. And they look like they're ready to play in the NHL. All three have work to do, but we're encouraged. And Giovanni Smith, as well, as you mentioned, I anticipate those guys, I'm hopeful that they're on our team next year. I'm hopeful that they're in the lineup. And the message to all of them was is that, guys, you're going to have to earn it. And I can put you on the roster. Our first decision, all those players you mentioned all need waivers if they're going to the American Hockey League next year. So our decision at the end of training camp are they on the roster, or are we willing to risk putting any of them on waivers? They're going to have to be pretty bad to be put on waivers at this point, and I don't anticipate that. But I can't guarantee that they're going to be in the lineup, and that's up to them. So it's an important summer for them all, important preseason training camp. But we're encouraged because I think they all, based on what I saw, I think they all can have a positive impact for us next year. And again, start to move some of these younger players into the lineup is encouraging. But starting off a regular season from day one, versus playing, games at the end of the season that they're meaningful for us for a lot of reasons, but you've got teams that are in the same situation as we were, and you got a lot of playoff teams that are resting guys. It's kind of, your record can be misleading at the end of the season. So these guys did really well, and I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll have a positive impact for us next fall.
For sure. And a few other guys kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum who played really solid for the Red Wings. I anticipate seeing them next year. But again, I'm not in your position. We talk about Jacob Vrana, Tyler Bertuzzi, Philip Hronik, just name a few. What do you anticipate their future with the Red Wings looking like?
Well, all of our restricted free agents, I can't say we'll qualify every single one of them, but the vast majority we will. And the question becomes, the term of the contract. Some of them, have our arbitration rights, some don't, but our expectation is we'll get them all signed. I'm just not sure the length of those contracts. We'll get to work on that, in the next couple of weeks and try to plug, kind of chip away at each one, I guess. And so I'm not overly concerned at that, but it will take some work to get it done. There's a couple of our RFAs that we've got to decide, for different reasons. Do we want to qualify them? Do we have a roster spot for them? What is their, what does their qualifying offer look like, or how does that affect, or what does their arbitration case look like? As you saw last year, there was a lot of restricted free agents who weren't qualified around the league, and it's probably somewhat of a trend with the cap being flat for a couple of years. So, the UFAs are a little bit different, and we've got a lot of bodies. We've got to decide, between who we bring back and how much we can afford to pay, certain guys for the role that they're in. So we got a lot of decisions to make, but again, the RFAs, I'm not, there's going to be work to be done to get the contract done, but eventually over the course of the offseason, we'll get them signed. I'm pretty confident, but it will take some work.
Absolutely. One last question and one last RFA question. Adam Ernie, he's someone you've had as a player for quite a bit now between Tampa Bay and Detroit. How do you feel he's grown as a player, especially with this and that he just had this past season?
Yeah, it's very, very encouraging for us. I feel good for Adam. I was there in Tampa when we drafted him, so I've gotten to know him since he's 18 years of age, and I've watched him work through his final years as junior, go to the American Hockey League, follow me to Detroit here. He's really driven. He really wants to be a good player in the NHL. He's put the time in, the work in, and it was good for him to see, kind of to his role. He earned a bigger role on the team and to thrive in it. And I think we've got a real good, a good player who is a little bit of a different dimension for us. A big, thick kid who's got pretty good hands and can play in a lot of different situations. So honestly, I think there's a lot more there. But I really like Adam's determination and his drive. I think we all feel good for him because I know he's put a lot of work into it, and I know he's really wanted it. He's been waiting and waiting for his opportunity, and he got a good opportunity, and he made the most of it.
Next up, Bob Winowski, Trade News.
Hey there, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, Wojo. Yourself?
Good, thank you. I think last year at this time, and maybe the year before, probably last year at this time, we asked you what's the biggest area of need on your roster, and I think you said pretty much everywhere, anywhere. What would be your answer to that today, now? The same or different?
Well, I think we could upgrade every area, to be honest. Yes. Can we upgrade in every area? I'm not so sure. But you're always looking to get better. I think 2 areas of concern. We've got to figure out a way to generate more goals. How we do that, I'm hopeful our younger players can generate a little bit more offense. I think with the players that have been here for a while, I expect them to score more than they did this year. So generating a little bit more offense. And then obviously when we, at the deadline, the left side of our D, we traded 2 defensemen in Johnny Merrill, Patrick Nemeth. We have 1 player on a contract, Danny DeKaiser, and a restricted free agent, Dennis Chalowski, who I anticipate getting signed. So we've got holes on the left side of our D that we'll need to address. And again, but I would say, one, we need to continue to improve to cut our goals against down. That's through good goaltending, through better defensive play 5-on-5, and continued improvement with our penalty killing unit. So how we do all that is we got to address what we do at the left side of our D, and then continue to work on the way we play. But personnel wise, we need more. We're hoping each of our young guys can. Adam Ernie, generate a little bit more offense. Can Philip Sedina score a little bit more? Robbie Fabry, Dylan Larkin generate a little bit more offense next year. So collectively, we need to score more as well.
Just a quick follow-up. As you stay the course for the most part with the rebuild, at what point do you think you'll get tempted for a big splash, whether it's a trade or a free agent signing? I know you say you don't know what's going to be available, but at some point, do you need or think you'll be tempted for a kickstart, so to speak?
I don't know. My approach has been like you kind of look for opportunities. You wait for opportunities to come along. When I've really ever tried to really force something and chase something, hasn't really worked out. Along the way here, I've never really tried to do something to make a splash. It's like there has to be a reason for it, a good reason to thinking you're going to be a better team. I don't want it just to look good. It has to actually be good. So I keep trying as we go along. Anything along the way that might come up to make sense. Like I'm not opposed to signing a free agent. It's one, how much are they going to cost? Does the contract make sense? And for us, for the short term and then long term as well. Any particular trade that may come along, you got to find a partner first. There's a lot of players around the league that I would love to add to the Red Wings. I just can't convince another GM to give them to me. So, you kind of wait and see what happens along the way. And so I guess, I don't really have an answer for you, but if there's an opportunity to kind of expedite our rebuilding process by making a trade that brings us a good player or good players, I'm certainly open to doing that, but I don't want to trade what I think are valuable young assets for players that might only be here for a year or two. That's not what I want to do. And would that make us better maybe now? It might, but ultimately I don't want to just make the playoffs. I want us to become a playoff team and a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup somewhere down the road.
So which free agent are you signing? I missed that part.
We're still finalizing our free agency plan. If you heard Art's fifth question, I thought I addressed free agency in that.
You did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up, Danielle Bruce, Red Wings TV.
Funny you say that, Steve. I had a whole list of questions for you, but Art asked all of them. So I only have one quick one for you, I promise. Dylan Larkin, I think if anybody asked Dylan Larkin to evaluate his season when it comes to a production standpoint, he'd probably say that he wished it was better. But as a captain, how do you think he did from that aspect, from somebody that has been in his shoes exactly as a young captain?
I think generating scoring chances and creating scoring chances for his line mates, I think he did an excellent job at that. I just think he missed a lot of chances. It happens. And this year, playing so many games in a row, things you get on a roll, things are great. You don't get on a roll, you're trying to catch up, and you never had that pause to get a few days of practice to regroup and kind of find it a little bit. So overall, I thought Dylan had a good year. I don't think there's anyone that would ever question his work ethic, his competitiveness in any game that he plays. I would never come home from a game thinking, Dylan didn't bring it tonight. As you all know, he's a really good person. He really cares about the Red Wings. He's driven. So overall, his numbers, goals, I guess, statistically aren't great, but I think he played well, and I think he played hard, and his leadership, his work ethic, his determination are very, very important, even when the numbers aren't there. So I think as the talent level of our team improves, as we get more balance, I'm not really too worried about the production. Ultimately, I see Dylan Larkin as an outstanding two-way player. I don't ever expect or think that we need him to lead the league in scoring. I want him to be a good player in both ends of the ring and focus on that. Whatever the goal totals turn out to be, they'll be good enough. My goal for him, and I've talked about it, is strive to be one of the best two-way players in the game. He's got the skills, the strength, and the skating ability and the work ethic to do that.
Thank you, Steve.
Our last question is from Mike Stone, 97.1 The Ticket.
Hey, Steve, I got a couple for you. Hope you're doing well. There were some high-profile names that have been available. Obviously, Gallant, Torts, now Tocchet. Did that stuff make you pause at all in saying, well, should I talk to other people before I make this decision?
Well, I think my decision had to be do I want to continue working, or do I want Jeff Blashill to be the head coach of the Red Wings moving forward? I think if I'm going to go out there, in fairness to Jeff Blashill, and say, Jeff, hang on, I'm going to go talk to a bunch of other guys, and then I'll come back and let you know, that was, to me, is the wrong approach. So ultimately, I say, I've worked with Jeff for 2 years. I'm responsible for the team that's on the ice, the roster that he's given. So I go back to, ultimately, I sit down with Jeff and think, okay, we talk, here's some things let's talk about our team. Let's talk about the way we play. How do you feel about coaching this team? Here's what I'm doing. Here's my expectations. Are you comfortable with it? And so ultimately, my decision, before I know who these names are that are out there, I don't know who else might come out there. My decision was, do I want to continue working with Jeff Blashill as our head coach? And I made that decision. So I don't think it was the right thing to do to go out and talk to other people. Stoney, ultimately, my decision came down to, I think it's my job, it's our job as an organization and it's on our players. We need our players to be better. So really, that's up to me and our staff to bring in better players, the players that we have to perform better. And again, if you don't have good players, changing coaches. You look around in all of sports. You're involved watching every sport, multiple coaching changes year after year after year. Ultimately, organizations don't change. I believe it's incumbent upon the players. You need a good team. And if I think our coach at some point is holding us back or not meeting expectations, then we'll address it at that point. But our players have to perform.
You mentioned offense. Power play, I believe, was next to the last. Did that have something to do with the staff change that was made within? And is it imperative to bring in, I wouldn't say a power play specialist, but somebody that knows how to make the power play run a little better than it was?
Well, I think we have to do something different with our power play for sure. Ultimately, in regards to Danny Bylsma, he was the head coach of the Stanley Cup champion Pittsburgh Penguins, head coach in Buffalo. And in his heart, he's a head coach and wants to be a head coach. He had, the Red Wings had reasons for wanting to bring in an experienced head coach in to work with the staff. And I think, I wasn't here at the time, but Dan had his reasons for willing to come on board. Ultimately, I think he's a head coach at heart and wants to do that. So that's the biggest reason for him, leaving. Ultimately, our power play is 31st. I think collectively it's struggled the last few years. One, we need to add to our personnel to get the right fit so our power play has a chance to be more successful. And then also we need to do things a little bit differently than we've done and change things up in the way we play, the spots players are put in, the way we bring the puck up the ice. It needs to be addressed. Who will be in charge of that? Who we can bring in to help it? We got to go to work and find that person now.
Final thing for me, I don't know how deep you can get into this, but everybody has to work in the off season, players, management, whatever. What is Jeff's greatest strength and what is Jeff's weakness that he would have to work on? What do you love about Jeff and maybe what would you think he needs to work on?
I don't know that I would, say that or point out any weaknesses, again, I go back to the beginning, for me, I think, he's a level-headed guy. I don't think he's, some coaches are really, really fiery and Jeff Blashill is himself. And every person has to be themselves. He's not trying to be somebody else. He's followed in the footsteps of Mike Babcock, who followed in the footsteps of Scotty Bowman. They're themselves. And Jeff Blashill, I like the fact that he's not trying to impress me or impress you. He just does his job. I think our players appreciate the fact that he has a tremendous work ethic, that he genuinely cares about the players. And I know he cares about the players because he and I talk virtually after every game, if not after the game the next day. And depending on the results of the game before, our feelings can vary. And he takes great pride in the player and the players and helping them. So what I think is great strength, or the most important thing for our team right now, that he's level-headed, he's open-minded, he's willing to listen, willing to learn, he's open-minded, but his eyes are open as far as what's going on around him in the league, that he doesn't have a big enough ego, that he's not going to listen to his staff, to his players, to me for that matter. He's learning, he's getting more experienced and better, but I like the fact that he's calm. I think he's level-headed. And again, I go back to, it's important for us that he's got some patience, not only just with our kids, but our veteran players. And as we're rebuilding, you have to have some patience. You have to be level-headed, because I know you all get frustrated. We all get frustrated. We can drive ourselves crazy if we get overly emotional and drive our team and our players, everyone crazy. And I like the level-headedness, his methodical approach to things.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be back shortly with Jeff Blashill.